Yu-Gi-Oh! Card Game The Chronicles continues with the Magistus lore, and honestly I think this might just be one of the better episodes. So this one is focusing on Endymion the Master Magician, a very iconic Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster who has been incorporated into the Magistus lore, and we actually start things off with him having a nightmare of his memories about Zeroa. As we know, Zeroa is the evil deity who's about to awaken and threatens the entire world, and very obviously Endymion is having a lot of worries. But I love that we really do get to kind of explore his character in this short. So the setting here is the magical citadel of Endymion, and on a day-to-day basis it is being defended by the Crusaders of Endymion who are fighting off against a giant orc, and dang, he really is giant. So yeah, that has some interesting implications for how this connects to potential giant orc lore, because that's a thing as well. But while the Crusaders may be having a bit of a difficult time, Endymion himself shows up and blasts the orc with a thunder spell. But while this does present Endymion as a king who presides over this city and protects everything, it is a little bit of a hint to some of his flaws, in how maybe he takes a little too much responsibility in wanting to be the one person to solve this problem. So we get a little look at the city and it's pretty cool seeing a bunch of other monsters, but I will go over all of those cameos at the very end. For now, we catch up with Endymion while he's finishing some sort of office work, when he is joined by Artemis. And from some lore and some other stuff, we know that Artemis is a goddess who eventually came to Earth because of Endymion or something, but basically they're an item. So she urges him to take a break and enjoy some tea with her. And yes, a good amount of this episode is just the two of them talking, which I think is a good choice. Sure, there is a bit of, I don't want to call it action specifically with the little fight against Giant Orc at the beginning, but I think when you have some limited time in these sort of animations, it is maybe a better idea to focus on some of the characters themselves, especially because in this short amount of time we really get to understand Endymion's feelings as well as Artemis's. So like I said, Endymion is definitely having a lot of complicated feelings about Zeroa returning, considering that he thinks he can't really get help from Aleister, and so far hasn't heard anything from Yugioh, so a lot of the responsibility is falling on him, and he is feeling kinda guilty in how he's preparing all of his people in the citadel to go to war. So then he's kinda just venting to Artemis and saying like, oh, why are you still with me and why are you still following me? And that is when she speaks up and warps him into this imaginary little court thing and kinda jokingly says, yeah, you're always talking about yourself negatively and treating yourself as a villain, yes, you're guilty, and it is sort of played up for laughs a bit, though we're getting a little more understanding of Artemis herself in some of her personality as well. But she's the one who kinda drops that she knew all along that Endymion was planning to go face Zeroa all by himself. Again, sort of following up on that little moment in the beginning of the episode. So he confesses that this is him feeling a little selfish, wanting to solve everything by himself, but in a way Artemis kind of encourages him to do so, saying that he's really already done so much for everybody else, that maybe he's allowed a little something for himself in this moment. But yeah, for a short amount of time, it's a good moment and some nice connection between the two, very obviously romantic in nature. I mean, she straight up says that she loves him. I don't know if there's like a formal relationship that they mentioned, I didn't see that specifically, but like I said, clearly they're together, and I think one card is supposed to be their child or something. So we end things off with a very nice day of Endymion announcing to everybody in the city that he's going to be facing Zeroa alone, and that he leaves the city to everyone else to protect and defend it. So yeah, actually a very nice episode. I do like it a lot better than the Aleister episode because I feel like we didn't get to understand Aleister so much as a character. I think he had a pretty good moment at the very end of that episode, but I would have liked a little more of an exploration. Again, if you're going to be doing an animated series like this that is so short and is focusing only on little snippets, I think spending some of the early episodes sort of focusing in on one or two characters before building up to like a final battle or confrontation, just like how this episode did, would be ideal. Yeah, this was a great episode and I really did like it. So anyway, yeah, like I said, the city doesn't feel like extremely full, but we do get to see good portions of it, and aside from the giant orc and the Crusaders at the very beginning, there are a lot of other things. So anyway, we see the spell counters once again, and we do learn that these are called spell stones, and their magical technology was pioneered by Endymion himself, and they're used to power basically everything around the city, from streetlights to floating water pails. Some of the other spellcasters we see around the city are really fun as well. In one early snapshot, we see Magical Exemplar hanging out with Disenchanter. Magicat of all monsters is even in the foreground, though we'll get back to that later. And also here they look really different, but this is Magical Marionetter. You can see that they just have their cloak covered up and the marionette is sitting on their shoulder. That's a really funny detail. Later on in another view of the city, we see Apprentice Magician, and Magical Exemplar returns next to Magicat as well as Magidog. I do know that Magicat is connected to Endymion because of some other card artwork, but it was just really funny to see it here. And then the really crazy one is that at one point we see what people are actually harvesting from the gardens. Inside the basket we see Mushroom Man number 1 and Mushroom Man number 2 as well as Glow Up Bulb. That is honestly really hilarious, and I think it was a great idea to show us a little bit of the city. Obviously, I think it would have been really cool to see even more of it, but for what we did see, I was really happy with all the cameos that they snuck in there. So anyway, that is it for this episode discussion. I think this is probably a decent amount longer, because like I said, I think it does a bit of a better job with the character work that's going on here, and there were a lot more funny little references to catch. Oh, also speaking of which, I might as well mention it here, I totally missed it in the Aleister episode last month, but of all monsters, Faithbird was actually in the very beginning. Shout out to Faithbird. Okay, I got that off my chest. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments about the episode, and if you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and hype it up as well. Anyway, this is GatorX, and I will catch you all later.